Join our knowledgeable hosts as they dive into the captivating universe of comic books, movies, TV shows, and pop culture. Get ready for vibrant discussions and a shared enthusiasm for all things superhero and beyond. A comic podcast straight from the panels. This is Beyond the Capes.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Cape podcast. With us today is the creative team behind Gungnir. We have Matt, Steve, and Jim. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing?
We're excited to have you. Before we even get started in this interview, and one of the things that I think drew me immediately to the company, no one ever uses the name Gungnir, which I'm assuming, based on your website, obviously is from the Norse mythology for the sons of Vivaldi.
Yes, all day. Yeah, we like to say that we're the hot pink punk rock Norse mythos attitude publisher.
That is fantastic. How did you guys come about? Because number one, in that story, there's so many items that come out of it. Was it Dropnir, the ring? Obviously Mjolnir. How'd you settle on the spear?
I'm very fascinated with Norse mythology, and I like Mjolnir and Stormbreaker and all the stuff that Thor has, but Gungnir and Odin himself is the god of poetry, and so I thought it was apropos to use his most magnificent weapon as a tip of the spear for what we can envision as a publishing company.
Awesome. And I mean, I'm assuming that goes across the board for you guys as well, Steve and Jim. You just did it feel right when like you guys kind of talked about this and you said, you know what, hell yeah, a spear.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm gonna be real with you. The company was already named when I came on. But that being said, like, I think it's appropriate too. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of content out there. I mean, I even hate that word. But any new company is going to have to cut through the bullshit, and it's going to have to cut through the noise. So, it's not just a name with this company; it's a thematic thrust. No. I thought 100 companies, not 100, but plenty of comic companies start up. And they are out there offering a slight variation on the norm. We've got to cut through that. We've got to be the tip of the spear. So I mean, yeah, it was already there when I came on, but at the same time, this is what we have to do to be a 20, 30-year company, to be a lasting company. We can't just be sitting there doing the next variation of it's Sherlock Holmes, but he loves bagels. Like we have to be doing actually fresh and new stuff. And by the way, like I just said that, and tomorrow that book's going to get a fucking Eisner, right? But like once it comes out, but the point remains. I was in the minute I heard it because I only want to work at a company that's pushing the new, that's pushing the different, and with that is pushing the boundaries of what you can get and what you can do in the comic book medium and the story medium, because we're pros too.
Yeah,
totally,
definitely.
Jim, what do you think? I've never asked either of them what they thought about the name, so I'm actually fascinated right now.
Well, you know what it reminded me of, which was really close to my heart. It reminded me of, remember when Alan Moore started Swamp Thing and he did that whole poem about the swamp and how it consumes and breathes, and there are things beneath the surface and there's shadows within shadows and all that sort of thing. And that was the stuff that really started to make me, like, inspired me and made me even want to get in this industry. And so when Matt talked about Gungnir and talked about the mythology before all the mythologies that are going to come of it, it seemed like it beckoned back to that, which are my origins in this industry, but then it also felt like deeply conceptual, so that we could even be a company that people wanted to learn more about. And what's the story behind the stories? And I've always been fascinated with writing that anyhow.
Definitely, that's awesome. Well, if you guys ever make a video, I always want to see, as soon as I saw the name, just Odin and like clashes of pink and black with electricity behind him, just throwing the spear. and then your comic books just rise from like the crack.
Send him the promo, Medney. Send him the sword promo.
We have
Ragnarok. That'd be sweet.
We do have some of that. Our production head, a guy named Alex, is having a lot of fun with some of these videos that we're putting out.
Awesome, good call. He's doing good work. All right, so that brings us to the whole reason we're here. Brand new company, shaking up the scene. How did we get here?
Yeah, I'll start. I used to run Heavy Metal magazine from 2020 till the end of 22. Till the end of 22. So that 3-year period was amazing. And when I left, I wanted to stay doing something publishing, really focus on stories that didn't just tell a great adventure or mystery or outer space epic, but that had like an undertone that was a metaphor for something happening in society. I'm a big believer that fiction is the philosophy of today, that we don't have much philosophers anymore. We have science fiction writers. And I think that those adhere to similar mandates over time. So I wanted to really lean into that. That was like the impetus for everything, was to tell these amazing stories that had a reason to discuss them on a Friday night over a beer between two friends.
Definitely, man. I mean, this is obviously the company. So when did you start bringing everyone in? Like, did you have a list of names? I mean, obviously you picked really good people. When I go down the roster, some of them, people that have done comic books for a long time, you made good choices. So was this always their thought?
Yeah, it started with Steve. Steve and I had worked together a lot at Heavy Metal, and he is definitely a stabilizer of ideas.
I was waiting for the noun.
If it's a bad idea, I'll know it very quickly, and vice versa. If it's a good idea, I'll know it very quickly. So when I pitched Steve on the idea for Gungnir, and he was into it, I had a good feeling that we were on a right direction. So that felt really good. And then all the other creators that we've been bringing in are people I've worked with. I started a comic book company about 10 years ago called Hero Projects, where we make custom comic books for musicians and athletes. We've done a ton of stuff with the NFL and Disney and Live Nation, Shaggy, as well as 311, Floyd Mayweather. And, we discovered a lot of artists before people knew who they were. Ivan Chavron, who did Toy Story and Guardians of the Galaxy, was doing 311's comic book for me in 2017. Simeon Ragazzoni was doing a comic book that I did for a company called Digital Arts and Sciences 3 years ago. Vincenzo, I can't pronounce his last name, but who does those amazing psychedelic covers that are multicolored and just they're the most incredible things. We'll link to his portfolio below. He did a comic book for us for Live Nation in 2015. So we've been working with some of these guys for a long time. So it's easy to, hit them up and see who wanted to provide new stories. And sort of that Rolodex of artists got me tapped by Steve Aoki's team to help with his manga/prose adaptation for his world called Hero Quest. That's when Jim and I met. Jim was writing it, and I got brought in to produce the book and art direct everything. And I think, when you're asked to do 50,000+ word prose book with over 60 pages of comic in 100 days, you either become mortal enemies or best friends. I think Jim and I went on the latter route of that and pitched him on the idea, and he was very into it, and here we are.
Yeah, obviously it worked out, and you guys are all, like I said, you're building something fairly big. I feel like I've seen the name starting to really pop up kind of across the web, which is really good too. And I don't know how you guys feel about because what you're doing is, I think, is the best thing for comics right now. Obviously, Marvel and DC, I would never say that they didn't put building blocks for comic books and what they've done. But having creators, writers, and artists like yourselves come together and kind of not be shackled almost by the laws that they're under, I think the stories are definitely going to be better. Was this all in the thought process as you guys joined, as you made this? Because I mean, obviously we see Tiny Onion, Ghost Machine, and I think this is the best thing for comics, is kind of giving you guys open space to do what you do best.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to see Steve and Jim's point of view here, because I haven't written for either of the big two, but I do feel like you hit it on the head. There's certain sandboxes that you have to stay within when you write for those companies or draw for them. Whereas, as Steve said, Gungnir's number one sort of ideology, it starts and stops with, like, is it weird enough? Can it be weirder? Can it be more interesting? Can we push the envelope further? Does that make it less mainstream? Great, because I really believe that the more you push to the fringe, the more mainstream it will bring the mainstream to the fringe. And you see that with a lot of movies and books and games that felt like they pushed an envelope, but then that becomes the new main. And that's how I think that you create really great culture, is by pushing that envelope and getting as weird as humanly possible.
Definitely. Steve, Jim, how do you feel about, I mean, kind of on like I said, the pinnacle? I think these are going to be the greatest times for comic books going forward with these groups.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up Ghost Machine and you bring up Tiny Onion. I think the key with all these companies, and us as well, is these are blue sky type scenarios within reason, right? Like I mean, I love Matt's energy, but are we all for sure? But that being said, weird in and of itself is not a story. So what our job is to do, of course, is to meet these new voices and use our experience from many different fields, many different parts of the industry, and then help them guide those things into a story. Which, by the way, is the best delivery vehicle for said weird, right? So, and I just want to I just want to say that because it's how you put your best foot forward. We want to focus, we want to bring new creators into comics. We want to and pros into storytelling. But we also, and this is key, if you want to talk about the big two, I'll say this: it's not exactly what you were expecting. It's not just enough to bring in new and diverse creators and just throw them in the deep end. Like, you got to teach them how to swim, right? So between Matt's expertise, Jim's expertise, my expertise, you are going to see people who haven't really worked in comics before, and you're going to see people who have. But our job is to help them deliver the best version of their story. And that's how you get the boundaries pushed. And that's also how you get people to pay attention and engage with said pushing. But what I was going to say is, as well, yes, Ghost Machine, Tiny Onion, great examples. And I think what's key is that, these are open spots for people to come. But at the same time, our audiences in general know what they're going to get from a company. That doesn't mean having the same style.
No.
That doesn't mean having the same types of books. It means having a North Star. With Tiny Onion, I think it's safe to say it's horror. With Ghost Machine, it's a little more spread around, but at the same time, the North Star in a way is the Jeff Johns vibe, and I mean that in a positive way. Like, these are original books, but the main writers for that company, Jeff is Jeff, and Pete. I love Pete Tomasi. He was Jeff's editor, so they're doing new mythology with that feel, that sort of, and I would describe Jeff's feel as almost like a modern Americana, modern Rockwell type feel, even though, of course, the stories themselves aren't always that upbeat. Certainly things like Hyde Street are not upbeat, but that there's a new old schoolness to them that I think is very with Jeff. With us, I say new old school. That's a great segue, because from my perspective, at least, Gungnir, this is a science fiction company. And it's not just a science fiction company. We want to be doing those types, the new versions, the modern versions of what I would consider raw, big idea, pulp science fiction, the type of things you find with a killer cover in the back of that used bookstore that you spend hours in. We want to be doing those for today. The type of big idea fiction that gave birth to some of the foundations of the genre. Things like Foundation, things like Dune, things like Arthur C. Clarke, right? So of course, that's been built. We want to build the next level. We want to build the next foundation. But that's the kind of high sci-fi, the kind of provocative. If I was being more pretentious, which would be impressive for me, I would say that it's speculative fiction, which has kind of fallen by the wayside. But I like that term because we're building off the realities of today. We're using those as not just jumping off points, as launch pads, as launch points for big stories that imagine what might come.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't even remember what the question was, but going along with what Steve was saying, I keep on thinking of going back to Gungnir and going back to this imagery. Like, we're trying to create epics, things that resonate, and things that, like, I always write to be reread. I think that part of the way in which Matt and the team has even come to this with even how they present books and how you get the box, you get this, you get the sense of hardcover. These are books that are not meant to just be, read once
and tagged,
side and that sort of thing. These are books meant to, to be read and reread and cherished even.
Yeah, we like to say that if you're going to cut down a tree, you might as well make the book look beautiful. Honor that ent that you're taking down.
And I think that, I will say one of the things that got me in the door, Matt showed me the packaging on like day one. And, for breaking out of the standard reading audience, I think a lot of publishers underestimate things like presentation. And so it was very exciting to me to see that Matt was there from, not even day one, because this is before I came on, like day -15, day -50, right? Like, this is us. Comics needs to catch up with the world, and the buying market expects high end. They expect elegance, and they also expect that not just in the product but in the delivery system. Look at the difference between buying Wegmans brand ice cream and like Jenny's ice cream or Salt and Straw. Everything is experiential now. It doesn't just start when you open the book. And so to see that from moment one, that everything about when you get a Gungnir book, reading it, of course, is the end game, but it's the look, it's the feel, it's something a little special. And as products become more expensive, I think that's all the more important, right? I don't think that for a modern graphic novel price, getting something and ordering it and having it come in like the retailer's brown paper bag is necessarily ideal, right? And so, or at least we could do more. So I was really, really excited to see that when I came on. I love when companies try anything new. Maybe they don't all work out, but I want to be working somewhere where no idea is off the table. And then, maybe if something doesn't work, it doesn't continue. Yeah. But that's what excites me as a creator. And it's certainly what excites me as an editor as well.
Yeah, and just to build on what Steve's saying there, I have some buddies that started a cannabis company called Jeter. They're pre-rolls, and if you know it, great. If you don't, the TLDR of it is that they took an industry that was about the use of the product and made it about the purchasing and receiving of the product, and their branding and the way that they packaged everything. And they had done some really great music festivals before that. That's how I met them. But I was just so inspired by how they looked at an industry that didn't really hold value at that time to the packaging and the delivery system of the item. And they were like, no, we're going to do that. And then it blew up for them. And it sort of gave me that light bulb moment when I was like, we could do that for comics and graphic novels and prose. We could turn the experience of receiving it as a gift or for yourself as something that makes you want to use the book and the packaging almost as an art piece in your house. It's art, it's a story, and as Jim said, something you want to come back to because the care that we put into the physical production of the product is equal to the care that we put into the story on the page.
Definitely. And I can attest for that too. The show you were on, like we were talking before with our buddy Tommy at World of War Comics, he made a video of the box. The box is beautiful. The first thing I saw reminds me of the Mines of Moria, like the entrance. That's exactly how I picture the box.
That's exactly what we inspired by. I'm a Tolkienite through and through, huge fan of the books and the adaptation. So yeah, there's going to be a ton of Tolkien Easter eggs throughout everything we do.
Perfect. And one of the things I think that's great, and that Steve had said, science fiction definitely has gotten downplayed in comic books. Ever since like the hero boom, the New 52, all of that from then on, everything was superheroes and just classic science fiction and that tale of like humanity trying to either be better or to be worse in some cases. I mean, that's just how the story goes, which is a great idea for you guys to pick back up on science fiction because the future is whatever you want to make it. You want to go into the future where everything is metal, everything's cured. You can do that. You could write for that. You want to go back to where humanity destroyed itself, which seems more inevitable as we get closer. You can go back to a prehistoric age. You're really not handcuffed, I guess, by taking science fiction because, like I said, the future is infinite to that degree.
100%. And I always say, all science started as fiction. And it's something that people, you take a second, think about it, but there's no scientific fact that wasn't once a theory. And that's all science fiction is. It's just like interesting theories. Those theories can go from possible to impossible. As my co-creator, John Connolly on Kuiper, likes to remind me many times, he's an astro engineer for a space company. And I regularly try to ask him how we would do impossible things to just see the reaction I can get out of him. It's just science fiction, folks.
Definitely. And for Steve and Jim, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that you guys have stopped writing science fiction, but is it nice to kind of take a little bit of a break from not having to have like a hero in cape and boots and like you can actually tell a story?
Well, I love writing comic books. I really do. I love writing superheroes. And I think everything I write on some kind of level, even when it's science fiction or fantasy or something like that, it's still going to be heroic literature. But there are kind of rules of genre that are different, whether it's fantasy or science fiction or superheroes. And what's great is having the freedom to kind of figure out on this one project what are its own inherent rules in what makes it click versus sometimes 50, 60, 70 years of continuity that an editor is then going to tell me what the rules are or what the rules of that particular editorial era are, and then having to work with those. I mean, all stories have rules. It's part of the structure of what makes it story, but it's nice to sometimes be able to make up the rules to it.
Yeah.
No, I think that's true. I mean, look, I got to agree with Jim. Like, if I had two pillars, it would be capes and science fiction. So I do love a person in a domino mask punching an evildoer in the face. I'm not going to lie. That being said, I also love chicken, right? But I don't want to eat it every day. So it's nice. There are things that we're doing in Gungnir. I know that whether editing or writing that I know I couldn't get over the plate at other companies, but that's because they're I mean, it's a little bit of the tail wagging the dog, but it's because, they have their motif, just like we discussed with Ghost Machine and things like Tiny Onion. But they're also, I mean, like, sometimes when I said the tail wagging the dog, I mean, sometimes it's about where and how you're selling, right? If your company is predominantly putting out these books in the mainstream, in the direct market, which is to say, like, if they're relying on the folks going in on Wednesday and buying them, well, then you kind of would need that capes lead because that's where the capes folks live. you know, and I love those folks. I'm working at Marvel and DC right now. But the freedom to tell these different kind of stories comes when you're also freed up from that being your main demographic. You know, we have books, of course, in comic shops and in the direct market, but we're also direct to consumer. We're also, you know, looking at distribution deals within the book market that Medney can talk more about. But like, this is a holistic effort. And it's maybe not things that always get talked about on podcasts, but this is how you really change the types of books that are out there. Otherwise, you know, you can do great in different books, but if you're trying to sell them the same way, if you're trying to market them the same way, you know, that presupposes that publishing is like Field of Dreams, and it's absolutely not. It's not if you build it, they will come. It's you got to build it, and then you got to trumpet it, and then you got to run around the village telling everyone about it. So I really enjoy, like yes, I like superheroes, but at the same time, yes, it's great to not just be able to do sci-fi and do big, what I would call sort of retro futuristic sci-fi in terms of concept, but to be at a company that once again understands that it's not just enough to do it. You have to find a way to reach people. They're not just going to come out of the ether, and that, you know, for folks wondering, really like a material example of what I mean, like look at any of your favorite books that don't star some type of mainstream superhero. If they're canceled before the first issue even comes out, if they only get 5 issues, well, you know, that's because, it's because of sales, and often it's because of sales that are low due to everything we're talking about. Making a book for one demo, but then marketing it as though it's for another, selling it place for another. So the fact that we're willing to go everywhere and get these books to people however we can, that empowers us to pay this forward and to grow and continue to tell these kinds of stories in a way that, to be frank, many other publishers can't.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if we did have fans just, you know, emerging out of the ether, then we'd be more of a fantasy company than a science fiction one. So couldn't really handle that.
I think we need to talk about that Field of Dreams example, though. There is that moment in Field of Dreams, though, where one of the ghosts, maybe it's Shoeless Joe Jackson, says, "Can I bring some friends?"
Yeah.
And that is an aspect of this industry. You know, when like part of the thing I love most about it is when people find a comic that they really love, or they find a book that they really love, they tell their friends.
Jim, you're carrying the metaphor, my man, and I could not be more.
You know, well, you know, comic books, jazz, and baseball are the only 3 true American inventions.
I believe that wholeheartedly.
Really?
Yeah, as far as if you consider baseball a art form, it's jazz, comic books, and baseball. Those are the only 3 like creative gifts to the world that are truly American.
Well, I do love baseball, so I think that's I'm all in on that. But you know, going back to what Steve said about you know, we have our direct to consumer and our other book deals that we're working through. You know, I think it's a missed opportunity that a lot of publishers don't focus on direct to consumer in that way. Not because I think we should focus less on the comic book shops. I think we should be serving the comic book shops as many books as they're willing to take, and serving the fans that go to the shops and all that. But, you know, the reality is there's, you know, something like 600,000 people that go to San Diego Comic-Con every year. And there's just not 600,000 people that are going to comic book shops every Wednesday.
Not even 10% of that. I mean, just to jump in, there's by far not 600,000 regular Wednesday readers. But to the point of what you're saying, Matt, it's not either or. And a lot of companies treat it that way. It's yes and.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah, and like, you know, I'll shout out to like Ryan Leibowitz at like, you know, Golden Apple Comics out here in LA is like an amazing partner. And, you know, Jim and I did a really great launch for Hero Quest with him earlier this year. And, you know, having great comic shops that want to do really cool things, have signings, and make it a community note should be well rewarded with more support from the publishers. But again, yeah, there's a lot of fans that wouldn't go to a comic shop, and we should try to find a way to reach those people too, because maybe that book that they buy online gives them the itch to explore their local comic book shop, because it could go both ways.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, I can agree with that. I think it's twice C2E2 for our one in Chicago here. I've met people that, flew in from, I think, like parts of Minnesota or like Duluth, Minnesota, somewhere up north, and they're like, you go to a comic shop every Wednesday to pick up a pull list. They said, yeah, if I'm feeling lazy, I'll wait till Friday. They're like, I don't even have one remotely near me. I would have to drive hours. That's just not a trip that I can make. And I feel bad because you could see that they live for this convention because it's the only way they're going to get books surrounded by them to stock up and kind of try to hold them over. So direct to consumer is a great model.
Yeah, and it's a piece of the whole pie, right? And that's really important that, because if we do have like partners, be it comic shops or small bookstores, like we want to be empowering all verticals to maximize profits on all sides, because at the end of the day, it is a business. We're hoping that our stories resonate, that will translate into the investments that we've made to turn that into a profit so we can make more books for everyone.
Definitely. Which brings us to the other reason we're here for this podcast, not just to introduce you guys, but I did read some of the books. We had Mutant Cats, Chupacabra, Last Breeds, Aeon. For me, Aeon was everything that I wanted it to be. I love when you take little bits of completely different people and force them to start working together. I will never get tired of that story, no matter how many times it's retold, no matter what aliens, robot, whatever you want to throw, I'm down for it always.
Yeah,
I guess what's your guys' experience with these books and these stories and getting up and going?
Aeon is near and dear to me because I came up with the concept and wrote it with I came up with it with John Connolly, who I wrote Beyond Kuiper with, and the two of us had this idea for the conversation at the end of time, and we had both just listened or just reread Sandman, and we thought it was a very Sandman adjacent story, and we were able to bring in Joe Harris, who's an amazing writer that I've worked with a lot when I was at Heavy Metal too. And I pitched him the idea, and the three of us collaborated on the words. And then I discovered this artist, Lorenzo Palmani, out of Italy. And it's been, I think, 4 or 5 years now that we've been putting this book together. It's definitely a labor of love. The art is incomparable, I think. The story, I think, is really good. And yeah, I'm excited for the world to see it. Steve did an edit pass on it, so he can talk to it a little bit. And I think, Jim, you've read it, right?
I don't think I have.
I'll make sure you read it. I'll get you a copy. I'll get you one of the galleys.
Yeah, I mean, I love Aeon. Matt is right. I came in. This was already in progress when I came out of the company, but as he noted at the opening, I can always find a couple things to clean up. A secret about creators is if you give us another day, we'll always find another thing. It's nothing is ever really done. It can always be more done. The opposite of my philosophy with grilling, actually. But regardless, I love Aeon. Matt is right. This is exactly the type of book that I've been running my mouth about. Essentially, a cataclysmic board meeting at the end of time. 12 Angry Men at the end of the universe. Take your pick. I can elevator pitch all day. But the point is, this is the type of big idea, big scale, big scope that I loved from back in the day. Things like what is it, Rendezvous with Rama, Bedney? Like I love scale in a story, and there couldn't be bigger stakes than the essentially, do we restart the universe or not? That we see in Aeon. So very sleek art, incredible creativity from Matt and Joe. And as a concept goes, like I said, this was so deep in my strike zone. I don't know. You like baseball, Medney. Finish that metaphor for me.
You hit a grand slam at the bottom of the ninth with it.
There you go. I hit whatever sends all the 4 people home and wins the game. That thing. I did that.
Yeah. No, I think the best part about that story is it hits the science fiction that you guys were talking about, but you could clearly pick out who your favorite hero is going to be out of that group, or just the thorn in the side that's going to be for everyone. That might be your hero because you just like the way that they interact. So very fun.
And we, just to tease, I think that the Multitude is a way scarier Borg. And that was the inspiration. Is what if Star Trek wasn't a PG show and the Borg were really evil, like really, really evil, and that's the Multitude.
Yeah, and it's gonna be an awesome story. Like I said, that one was my favorite. I'm also really happy when I saw the title for Chupacabra. There's nothing better than I love than when people take all the different lords. You give me the Jersey Devil, you give me Mothman. There's just so many stories that could be told and so many ways to spin it. You want to make them a hero, they can be a hero. You just want to make them a general nuisance monster that's here to wreak havoc. You can do that. How did you decide on going? Is this going to be something where you could take Chupacabra and kind of run with it and do other mythos with it?
Yeah, the studio called Candle Media that owns Reese Witherspoon's book club, Hello Sunshine, has a Latin American subdivision called Exiled. And the guys over there, Eric and Nando, had brought me in for a meeting, and I had sort of on the fly pitched this secret society idea of Chupacabra. And they were amazing partners who bought in on day one and helped fund the book. And we're in development on a TV or film adaptation right now. We're deciding on which of those two routes we go. And it was really just my love growing up of Buffy and Sabrina the Teenage Witch and the new series of Wednesday and the new Sabrina. And I just have this real love for mystical type stories centered around a high school mystery. I just think they're so fun. Very Archie Comics-esque. Yeah. And, Goons and Goblins, who's a Chicago native, he works at, I think he did a signing at All Yeah Comics, which I think is out there. And Kyle is his real name, and he crushed the art. We really wanted this juxtaposition of a really dark story, if you really read every word, juxtaposed with this really pulpy, fun, colorful artwork. And we thought that those two competing forces would make a really interesting story. And I think Kyle absolutely nailed it with the art.
Yeah, no, you guys did a great job overall with all the stories. What I am curious about is because it's science fiction and because these stories can all take place at separate times or in the same universe, was there any talk at some point where you said, let's just take our stories and do Easter eggs, or maybe let's do an Easter egg because I think maybe down the line we can start to blur some of these realities?
Yeah, I think we definitely are thinking that way. I think some of the books have some Easter eggs in them, whether it's a relic on a table or a callback to something to give you a sense of what timeline it's from. But we definitely haven't thought of everything as a connected universe. It's more that paying homage to the publisher as a whole.
No.
I think the the greatest thing for Easter eggs, especially in the comic industry, is that it's a reward for the reader who is dedicated and in love with this stuff. So it's like, there's nothing better than like if I'm reading something and I see something and then I get to point it out to a friend, because there's that whole community aspect to it all. And, I can't imagine, in some cases, I can't imagine crossovers between some of these books, but in other things you can.
Yeah.
And I think also, just to circle back to like why Chupacabra, I'm Brazilian. My family and I are from Rio. So, telling this sort of Latin American boogie monster story, but with this little flair, I thought was a nice homage to my roots and to some family members and I that have talked about creatures like this for my entire life.
Definitely. Now with each of these stories too, and obviously Matt, you brought everyone together. I know you had a heavy hand creating a lot of these stories. I know that Jim and Steve, you guys are listed. Obviously, you've done a lot of the editing and kind of going over. You have a lot of experience to bring to this too, to make sure that the story is really still free but kind of cohesive. What was it like, kind of going through these stories?
I mean, I like so first of all, much like I said about science fiction versus capes, like with creative work in general, you gotta sort of stimulate different parts of your brain. So I was very happy to come on for the editorial sort of guidance side, because it's still creative, but it's a different muscle, right? And it allows me to sort of keep hopefully different parts of my work and my brain fresh. But that being said, too, these are great books, and knowing that I'm going to be helping creators, and I have helped creators tell the cleanest, best version of their stories. Admittedly, it feels karmically right. I had I had a very good mentor in comics. I did not pay him for 20 years, so the fact that I get to be able to be paid to help guide people is very nice. But I have, for better or worse, I have a different perspective, I think, than a lot of people, and I think it's benefited me. I think when it comes to behind the scenes, how we do the work, how we get things on the page. So there's an element. It's of course, doing something different is great, but being able to pay that forward is also really, really exciting to me. And that brings me around to what I said earlier. Like, we can't just drop people in the deep end.
Yeah.
And then say, "Oh, look, you fucked it up." Well, you didn't even tell them what they were doing. You didn't, they didn't finish the event. You didn't tell them they were doing the backstroke. So, I think that for me, yeah, it's been great guiding the books. It's great interacting with creators and helping them find the truest version of the story they want to tell. That's what, at least in my opinion, editing is. It's not imposing what you would do on a creator. That's just another form of writing.
Yeah.
It's helping them tell the best version of their story. So, I'm kind of a vulgar guy and kind of a blunt guy. I've been, talking about what editing is for decades. And so this is a good time to put up or shut up and put my money where my mouth is. And as the books come out and people like them, it seems like maybe we're onto something here.
Definitely. Jim, how about for you?
For me, of the books I've edited here, in some cases, it's just doing, a grammatic edit. But then in some cases, it's like I'll see a through line and point it out to the creators, and they're so grateful. And it then ties something together that wasn't there before. And it's more like in some ways it's like editorial stuff, and in other ways it's like film development, story development, and it's exciting to do all of it.
And I think also, Ryan, a bunch of the books that we've put out in the early years, I had heavy hand in, helped write, because they were just sort of books that were in my arsenal, and I took them out from being published other places. But we have a slew of books that are being written by Steve and Jim and other creators that we're taking submissions on. So in aggregate, over a 5-year period, I'm going to assume that the books that I have a heavy hand in are going to diminish in percentage. And we're really aiming to look to bring in all types of voices, young, new, people that are legends that are just starting out. We really want to be a sandbox for people to tell interesting science fiction stories.
Definitely. Which actually brings us to our last few questions before we wrap everything up is, so what do we have in the pipelines? What do you guys have that you're working on story-wise that you can at least tell us now that we can be on the lookout for?
Yeah, Jim, you know what you can talk about, and Steve, you as well. You guys dive right in.
I was gonna say I have done this pitch so many times that and you are officially a co-writer, so I'm putting you to work on mine actually.
So do you want me to just do it? So Steve and I are writing this really great story called The Diplomat. I look at it as what would you say, like a golden boy story turned bad. We watch this guy through against all adversity rise to the top after a horrific tragedy, and when you're about halfway through the book, everything changes, and everything that you thought you understood, you don't. And the flip that we do right at the middle, I think, is really, really fun. And yeah, I don't want to say more. Steve has a way better pitch without spoiling than I do, because I was realizing that I'm going to spoil a little bit of stuff.
Man, that's great. He said it out loud and everything. You heard it here, folks. But Matt did do a great job. No, as he said, look, The Diplomat is a story about turning the structures and infrastructure of society to your side. It's about weaponizing the American dream for revenge. And that's a great tagline and logline while still being pretty big, like the boss wants. So that's what you'll see in The Diplomat. And look, it's my first step into prose. I'm very happy to be working with Matt on it. Look, and this is going to be grindhouse fiction. For me, this is going to be an ode to those gritty is so overplayed it should be banned from the English language, but those raw like exploitation revenge films of the late 60s, early 70s. That's stuff I grew up watching because I secretly have the soul of an 83-year-old man. And that's the stuff I love. So it's going to be hard hitting, but it's definitely set in today, and it's going to have a point. What those often lack is the aftermath of the violence, of the revenge. And look, it's not the 70s anymore. We have to offer more. So we're not just going to have that violent catharsis. We're going to explore what it really means, which is the obligation of a modern writer or a modern writing team. So you're going to get, that classic violence, but you're going to get that little seasoning at the end that you rarely, if ever, see in this type of action revenge story.
Perfect. And Jim, what do you got in the works?
For me, I'm in the midst of book 1 of a 3-book series called Never a Never Boy, which is going to be hopefully the ultimate Earth X of Peter Pan mythology. When I pitched Matt the idea and the basic reveal of book 1, he was like, "We're in." I said, "Wait, I haven't even told you about book 2." And then I started telling him about book 2, and he goes, "I'm still in." And then I told him how 3 concludes, and he's like, "Where's book 1? I want book 1 now." He was kind of even mean about it. I think that's actually just more passionate, but at least that's what I'm telling myself.
It is the story rounding of Peter Pan that you never knew you needed. The way that Jim rectifies a lot of questions that you have from original Peter Pan in a really elegant, really interesting way that revolves around Peter, but also some of the other characters that you really love, and making sense of things that might have been suspensions of disbelief for the sake of a story. Jim's been able to weave an idea that rectifies that entire story stream, and I'm just really excited for people to see it.
I mean, we need to, as much as it's cringe, I have to elevator this. I love Jim has ran the whole story down for me. What Wicked did for Wizard of Oz, this book does for Peter Pan. And that doesn't necessarily mean the tone is the same, but I don't think there's anything wrong with, giving a nod to one of the most successful things in this genre of all time. So for folks listening, I mean, it's not the same tone. Nobody's defying gravity. But actually many people are, if you think of it. Finally, my quippiness came back to bite me in the ass. But the point is, like, what it does do, as Matt said, is this is the untold story in a way that is vibrant. It's engaging. I mean, I still remember sitting on Matt's roof watching our meat slow smoke and hearing this from Jim, and I wanted to read it right then. So I mean, and that was months and months ago. It's still just as vibrant in my mind, the pitch. So I can't wait for it to get out there. I mean, I'm going to be right there. If I wasn't, if I didn't need to get in line, because I'm at the company, I would be in line, waiting for it.
Well, that sounds fantastic.
I feel like it's one of those stories that I was meant to write. It feels like there's been gravity on me to have to write it, and so I'm so grateful.
Perfect. And now Matt's ready to chain you to the typewriter until you get that first book out.
That's right. That's right.
You know what? Listen, this is
Words
just.
right.
I'll say this right now, and I feel comfortable saying it. Jim is going to finish this book series before Song of Ice and Fire, so we are safe.
Correct. I will put money on that as well. All right. Well, these sound like great books. For everyone listening, obviously they can look out for their comic book shop if they order them, but obviously you guys do have direct to consumer on your website. What's the website? Where's the best place to follow you guys? Stay up to date with these stories and get in on everything that you guys are creating.
Yeah, it's gungnir.books.com and at Gungnir Books on all social media.
Perfect.
On Instagram. So it's just JIM Kruger on Instagram.
Perfect.
That's actually also my Instagram handle, which became kind of awkward.
More of a conversation.
To be real, I've sort of stepped back from social media. You should definitely follow the Gungnir accounts, but I am on Blue Sky until that too becomes a cesspool at the Steve Orlando, and I am on Instagram. Instagram and Blue Sky are my last two remaining ones, and I'm at the Steve Orlando and both.
Perfect. Well, for everyone listening, we will have all these linked in the comments below. Follow them, get in on these stories. You won't be disappointed. Thank you guys for coming on. We look forward to watching you guys grow. Like I said, you guys got amazing stories in the pipelines, and we can't wait. Everyone listening, give them a follow and have a good night.
Oh, yeah.